One of the dumbest internet debates that I feel like people will debate for like a month and then, not talk about it for a year and then bring it back up is the debate whether or not being a streamer or a YouTuber is harder than working a quote unquote real job.
Yes, a real job can be gruesome. A real job can make you very tired, but a real job doesn't suck the soul out of you. You know what I mean? In the same way that 9 hours of streaming absolutely will.
I mean, you really think it's not true that after you spend 9 hours being investigated by thousands of people with every facial movement, everything you say, every word, with people constantly trying to disagree with you and fight with you, that's not socially draining?
Understand what I'm saying? Being like a streamer or any face on the internet is harder than a 9 to 5 in certain ways because it fuck you up mentally.
Bro, here's the thing that you don't understand. You guys act like, oh, my job is so easy, streaming is so easy, oh, you get to do all this cool stuff. Here's the thing. I genuinely think that streaming is harder than an actual job.
So today we are going to look at all the claims for why streamers and YouTubers think that their lives are much harder than a normal person working a 9 to 5, as well as give my own opinions on this debate because I've been making YouTube videos since 2016 and have been doing it full time since about 2020. So first off, looking at Hasan Piker's argument, he's basically claiming that streaming is quote unquote harder than a real job because it drains your social battery more than a normal job.
Social battery wise, unless you're in retail, it's very different. You're out of touch. I'm gonna die, dude. There's motherfuckers who are accountants in here and they're misunderstanding what I'm saying. A real job does not expend your social battery in the same fucking way as someone who did a sales job, a real job.
The problem with Hasan's argument is that he is claiming that social battery is a main factor that would classify a job to be harder than another job. Like, I'm no accountant, but I think that overall accounting is a harder job than trying to sell something. Like, that's just in general. Like, I personally think it's a lot easier for someone to work in sales than to work in accounting.
9 hours of constant performance and people pleasing taps you out from social scenarios. After 9 hours of that, I could probably do fucking physical labor. It would not bother me, but I can't fucking do more social shit. That's my point.
Okay, but flip that around. If you did 9 hours of physical labor, you're going to be so tired out from that you probably don't want to be social. So I personally don't think that just because something is draining your social battery that it makes it quote unquote harder than a real job that doesn't drain your social battery.
There are obviously real jobs out there that are good comparisons. Service sector, people pleasing jobs would be very similar. Those are like, I think, customer service type shit. But like if you're an accountant or if you're even like in sales, my interactions with clients was limited, way more limited than like constantly having to do this for 9 hours with like a back and forth interaction for 9 hours. That's what like sucks your social battery and you just tap out after it. Yeah, think about it this way. You give presentations for your job, right? Imagine giving a presentation for 9 hours straight. After a while, you would be like, I don't want to talk ever again.
So Hasan's argument for why Twitch streaming is harder than a normal 9 to 5 is that it drains your social battery so much that it quote unquote sucks the life out of you. Compare that to a job like accounting where you sit at a desk or computer all day and work with numbers and not have many social interactions. And I think this is such a bad claim for why streaming is harder than a normal job. And you can bring it right back to the physical labor claim. Any job is going to suck the soul out of you. Being in sales, being in accounting, being a realtor, being a neurosurgeon, even though you are required to perform different tasks than you would at, say, like a different job, each job has its thing that is going to quote unquote suck the soul out of you. Hasan's claim that streaming is so hard because it wears out your social battery is the exact same thing as saying that physical labor is so hard because it wears you out physically. It's literally the same thing. It's like just a different aspect. So based off of Hasan's argument, he doesn't make a good case of why streaming is harder than a normal job. So let's look at the next.
He says that he gets exhausted socially because he's talking to people for 9 hours a day. You really think that's not true? I mean, you really think it's not true that after you spend 9 hours being investigated by thousands of people with every facial movement, everything you say, every word, with people constantly trying to disagree with you and fight with you, that's not socially draining?
I don't think anybody is disagreeing that it can be socially draining, but that's such a bad argument for why it's harder than a normal 9 to 5. Like, there are so many jobs that require you to be social for long periods of time. Like, think about about being a surgeon or a doctor. Not only do you have to be social and communicate with colleagues, but also with like patients and the patients' families. Like, I cannot imagine how socially, mentally, and physically draining something like that is. And yeah, streaming is socially draining, but you are also sitting in front of a camera responding to people's messages. And I'm not saying that streaming is the easiest job in the world, but I also think there are a lot of jobs that are way harder and that drain your social battery a lot more.
And he's not comparing it to every other job. He's saying compared to other jobs where you're not talking to people constantly. His take isn't broad enough. Yeah, it is. He explained it pretty clearly.
So streaming is harder than normal jobs that don't require you to be social. So being a streamer is harder than being a software engineer or a video editor or a graphic designer, because those are all jobs where you don't have to be social. So just because streaming is more socially draining, it's classified as harder. I don't know about that.
I usually spend the first hour of my stream talking about nothing, and like then I don't like play video games until like it's midnight or like 5 hours into the stream. I didn't do anything. Like we gotta get this shit done. Like there's a lot of stuff to talk about today. I don't have time to fucking sit around and talk about like, oh, I went live late today because my back hurt. Oh my god. We really need to hear about this again? Who the fuck cares?
Honestly, I have no clue what bro is yapping about. I think he's saying how streaming isn't just like going live and talking about nothing and then playing video games. He's trying to make a case that he has shit to get done when streaming, which I'm not trying to discredit him or anything, but from what I've gathered from this dude's content is he literally just talks about like news and drama and other things going on online. So get shit done means browsing Reddit and talking about things that are trending. I don't really know. Sure, it's mentally draining talking about trends and news for a few hours, but I still can't wrap my head around how it's harder than clocking into work at 9 a.m. and doing whatever your job is and then clocking out at 5. Again, I think it all depends on what profession you're in, but in general, I wouldn't consider surfing the web and talk about your findings for a few hours a day harder than a 9 to 5. But let's look at the next case for why streaming is harder than a 9 to 5.
Understand what I'm saying? Being like a streamer or any face on the internet is harder than a 9 to 5 in certain ways because it fuck you up mentally. Now, waking up every day and go to a job and lifting boxes, like depending on what you're doing, that shit's tough too. That shit is hard. That shit is very hard. That shit is very hard. It's very hard. Like, you feel me? Especially when you're doing a job you don't enjoy doing. That shit is tough. That shit will fuck with your mental. You might want to, you feel me? You might be tired of it. You might be unhappy. But being a face, like being a top streamer is difficult because of all the shit you go through in terms of like living life. I promise. I'm telling you, gang. You are literally seeing thousands of niggas give their thoughts on you every second. That's not supposed to be. Like, no human brain normally should be able to tolerate that. Just keep it above. Not true. You feel me? Facts. I'm telling the truth.
Part of this claim that I actually agree with is the whole like being a top streamer or YouTuber could be considered harder than just like a normal person working a 9 to 5. I think about it like, could a regular person do what Kai Cenat is doing? Probably not. Could a normal person do what Mr. Beast is doing? Probably not. But could a regular person work a 9 to 5? Yes. Now, I don't think this applies to all streamers or YouTubers. Like, could anybody do what I do? Yes. Do I think what I do is harder than a 9 to 5? Not at all. I think there are aspects that are harder than a 9 to 5, but overall, I do not think it is harder by any means.
Bro got to fly to Japan and is complaining about his job. Bro, here's the thing that you don't understand. You guys act like, oh, my job is so easy, streaming is so easy, oh, you get to do all this cool stuff. Here's the thing. I genuinely think that streaming is harder than an actual job. And I'm gonna tell you why right now. Go ahead and laugh at me. Go ahead and laugh. I'm gonna tell you right now why streaming is harder than a normal job. Tell me it's not harder to have to fly 17 hours all the way out to Japan, have jet lag, be tired. Then when you get here, you have to walk around in the hot sun, 100 degrees out, sun beating down on you, you're sweating, you're tired, you're hungry, and then you have to stream yourself like shopping for clothes and going shopping for like 6-8 hours a day, bro. Like, that's genuinely hard compared to working a normal job where you just go in for like 6 hours every day, because normal jobs work, 30-hour weeks, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 30 hours, and then you have the weekends off. Like, you guys have to understand, it's way harder to stream, and then I have to go around and mog everybody, bro. And I just walk around in public, talking to people, mogging, just like trying to interact with people. Like, it's hard to have those social skills compared to having a normal 9 to 5 job.
I think we need to change the debate by not claiming that streaming or being a YouTuber is harder than a 9 to 5. I think these are literally all cases for why streaming is more mentally draining job. And I mean, even Gideon tweeted saying working a 9 to 5 is harder, no ifs, ands, or buts. When you don't know if you're gonna have enough to put food on the table, that outweighs the stress a multi-millionaire streamer goes through. Sure, some aspects are harder, but anyone would rather be in our position. None of us are even willingly clocking back in. And I think this is a great way to put it. Like, yes, streaming and being a YouTube is considered hard, like depending on what you do, but overall I don't necessarily think it's harder than a normal job. And seeing people actually boot up their live streams and complain about how their lives are so hard just because they sit in front of a camera and talk for a few hours a day, like exactly what Gideon said, anyone would rather be in the position of someone like Kai Cenat. The only reason why I could see the argument for why YouTube or streaming could be harder is just because of the financial risk. I mean, at any point your YouTube account could get suspended and you could lose all of your income overnight. Like sort of the same as getting fired, but most YouTubers or streamers don't have degrees or anything to fall back on. And yes, content creation is a stressful job and requires a lot of hard work and dedication, but you are your own boss, you dictate what content you make, and you make all the decisions. You don't have to report back to someone or have set in stone strict deadlines. There is a lot of freedom that comes with YouTube and streaming, and that could be a blessing and a curse. If you don't grind and are constantly taking breaks, you don't make money, and it's as simple as that. But yeah, I just think this is honestly one of the dumbest debates on the internet, and low-key the people who are sitting here and complaining in front of tens of thousands of people who are probably struggling to pay rent, complaining about how tired they are because they have to fly to Japan and talk to people. Grow up.